All right, hey, everybody. How is it going? We've got a handful of people here already. Tiago is here. Hello, Tiago. He says, 9 p.m. I should be going to bed. You'll survive as long as you can. Yes, I'm so glad you could make it, Tiago. And Hadar is here. Awesome. Gosh, Hadar, you're up late as well. A lot later than Tiago. Thanks for joining me at a totally different time than usual. Usually we do this 4 hours earlier than now, but I had a couple little thing come up that I just couldn't reschedule. And Sir Woolsley's here. Hello, the piano is ready. It is ready. It just got finished yesterday. I haven't even put out the videos about the whole process yet. And Antonio's here. Hello, Antonio, but the piano is done. So, yeah. We'll do a little more playing today, but I hope the tuning stays pretty well. So those of you that have kind of known what's going on, I got all the strings for the top 3 octaves replaced, and I haven't been able to play the piano at all in 4 weeks. So the tuning's probably not going to hold for more than like a couple days. It's already starting to go out, just a wee bit. So how is everybody doing? We have 12 other people here. If you haven't said hello, drop your name in the comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. Julia, hello, Julia. Nice to see you. Antonio, we're going to be talking to Antonio first today. Antonio sent me an email with a great question. Antonio, can you let us know where you're from? And Jose is here, 4 p.m. in New York City. Awesome, Jose. Even though it's 4 hours later, I still have my coffee. I do it all day long. Awesome. Well, it's great to see you. And PG, good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Well, let's jump straight into Antonio's question. He did submit a video, but it's not of playing a piece. It's a couple examples. Antonio is from Italy, but you live in the Baja Peninsula. Awesome. Is it beautiful down there or what? And we have Miss Riverdee from Scotland. Awesome. We have people that I have not seen on the streams before. So welcome, especially if this is your first time, or if it's your first time dropping a line in the chat, then absolutely welcome. So let's pull something up here. Nelba, also from Canada. Great. Antonio says, awesome weather. Yes, I bet. Ocean breezes. So, we're going to jump straight into Antonio's question. He sent me an email, and we'll get into that first. But everybody else, feel free to drop some questions in. We're going to start by talking about fingering choices at the piano. And we'll see just how deep this goes, and if people have questions about other fingering choices and pieces that you're working on. So, and PG says, in Barcelona. Awesome. And Scott Weaver's here. Awesome. Hello, Scott. Oh, you're in southern New Mexico. What part of New Mexico? I sometimes travel to see my wife's family in the Albuquerque area. So, all right, let's jump in. So, Antonio sent me this little image of an arrangement he's working on. And it's an arrangement of Misty, the jazz standard. Probably an A in the next bar, right? So the question, you can see the part that Antonio circled here. Those notes leading into bar 3. What fingering choice do we use? And Antonio mentioned that he found a teacher teaching this arrangement online, and they said to use 1, 2, and then put thumb on B flat. Or if I show you from over here, we have 1, 2, and then thumb on B flat, like that. 1, 2, 1. Now, I bet there are people here that know probably exactly what I'm going to say. Chime in the comments if you want to. What do we see right off the bat that's not good about this fingering? 1, 2, 1. Before I go on, I'm going to wait and see what people say. Antonio also kind of knows my answer already to his question, but Tiago says the Chopin method. Tiago, explain that a bit more. Sir Woolsley says, ew, thumb on a black key. I like your reaction, Sir Woolsley. I like it. Jose says, have to move in too much. Antonio says, the teacher's suggestion was even more tricky because he said to pass the thumb over the second finger. That sounds really bad. Let's just get that one right out of the way off the top, because putting thumb over two means like turning the wrist in this really awkward place, and then we've got a shift 5. That seems really, really awkward. Tiago says long fingers on black keys. Yes. You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Tiago, and I'm glad, Tiago, you said Chopin method, because the more you know about Chopin, actually, the thumb's not good on a black key no matter what, but Chopin was a fan of, and the Opus 10 No. 2 Etude is a great example of this. He was a fan of crossing fingers over other fingers. I have not played that etude, but you know, it's the... we get chords in the bottom of the right hand and a chromatic line that walks up. And it's all walking up, usually 4, 3, 4, 5, 3. So it's all fingers over another finger. And that is a great skill to have in the right circumstances. But it never involves the thumb. So, okay, great comments from those of you that chimed in. Thank you. I'm going to switch back to the top-down view, and we're going to talk through this more. Okay, so the initial problem is with going over the top. I don't know how we get the thumb there unless we do something like that. Even if we curl in, I can feel so much tension here. And hopefully I see the video might be having some trouble with streaming. So let me know if there's any problems. I don't know if there's much I can do, but hopefully it's going okay for everybody. So, couple suggestions for this bar in particular. Let me refresh you on those notes. G, A, B flat. If we're going to play this, there's no way we can use 3 and do this 1, 2, 3, 5, because the distance from 3 to 5, if we're going to play this legato, that's really bad. We can't stretch to it. We cannot finger legato it at all. We could jump, but that's going to require super precise pedaling, and it's still probably not going to be as smooth as if we can connect with the fingers. So, okay, I have 2 suggestions about this. Haydar says, simply counterintuitive. Yeah. Okay, so first suggestion, start on 2, pass thumb under, gets 2 ready for the black key. We still have a bit of a stretch, but it's somewhat doable. It's a major 7, so it's just shorter than an octave. So with some nice wrist movement in here, 2, 1, 2, we can stretch and do that. That would be my absolute first choice for fingering for this particular bar. 2, 1, 2, stretch to 5. If that stretch is super awkward, let's talk through just how we can make it possible to actually put the thumb on a black key, which is what we always say never to do. But I could see, especially in a case if the pianist, Antonio, I don't know what size hands you have, but I have a number of students that have much smaller hands than I do, and we're usually always working around fingering solutions around how far we can stretch to keep it healthy. So another solution for this is going to be to play just what this teacher you were seeing online, Antonio, said to do. Well, almost. Where we're going to put the thumb on B flat, but in order to get it there, we're going to slide second finger up. So the thumb it feels almost like a scale fingering. Let me show you again. So, thumb, 2 can play out here on the key, as long as it can slide up and in between the black keys. So you have to have fingers thin enough to do this. And then when the thumb crosses under, It's still not the best solution, I don't think, but it is possible, and it does make it possible if we can't reach 2 to 5, we can now play 1, 5. And let me clarify that a little more. So I know I talk a lot on here about never putting a thumb on a black key. If we have to play, let's say, a G7 or this is a G minor 9, and we have to play it in first inversion in the right hand, let's say. So if we're back here and you see this, there is no way to play this without using the thumb on B flat. There is no other fingering choice if we're going to play this whole chord, or here, or this, or however we work that out, right? So sometimes, when there isn't another choice, this is okay. So going back over that, sliding 2 up so that thumb can just play the B flat. Backwards fellow says, thumb on black key, ew. Try playing F sharp major triad arpeggio without it. F sharp major. Why would you say F sharp major instead of G flat? That makes my brain hurt. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Without. That's nice. Of course, I would actually probably play F sharp major with the thumb on the black key. There are different skills there. Yeah. So the quick answer is if we can't stretch to play this 2, 1, 2, 5, we do get the A to the pedal. But if we can't stretch, there is another solution, but definitely not the thumb over the top. Definitely not that. And in fact, if you wanted to play 2 further into the key to begin with, where we're prepped for that, I would say that's okay. Antonio says you have a normal hand size, not Rachmaninoff. I don't have Rachmaninoff hands either. I'm short by a couple intervals. Okay, so I'd love to hear from all of you. What pieces have you encountered where you have to put a thumb on black key? It's not always possible to completely avoid it. Backwards fellow says, is this your piano restored? Yes, it is. It's my first day with it, actually. My tech was here until 6 o'clock. He was here for 6 hours yesterday, installing the hammers and shanks, and gave it a very quick tuning. But anyway. Scott Weaver says, the black key etude. Yes, perfect example. Yep, Moonlight Sonata first movement, Haydar says. Another perfect example. Seth, hello Seth. Seth says, usually octaves. Yes, octaves all the time. We've got to use thumb on black key. So we've already now seen, there are plenty of examples where we have to break that rule. The place that it stands more is if we have lyric passages. Let's see, Backwards fellow says, no, just the 3-note just the 3-note triad. Oh, goodness. I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. If we were going to play just a G-flat triad arpeggio without the thumb on a black key, is that what you mean? I don't think I've ever played G-flat major triad without thumb on a black key. Yeah. So I was saying that we've already now just seen there's a whole bunch. I mean, one person with one example, just from the people that are here today, all kinds of examples of where we have to use thumb on the black keys. I'm interested to hear what Backwards fellow says about this. I see we have more people who have joined in. While we're waiting for Backwards fellow to type that out, if you haven't said hello, drop your name in the chat and say hi and let us know where you're tuning in from. Thank you, Backwards fellow. He says it sounds gorgeous. Antonio, while we wait for that, Antonio, have you been, I'm going to get to your question, Seth, in just a second. Have you been playing this whole arrangement of Misty? Yeah. Nice, nice. And if you've been playing this arrangement, I would really encourage you to go check out I think it's the original key is E flat. You might be able to find a really nice arrangement in E flat that's doable for you. So you say you played the abridged version so far, but you're getting there. Great, great. It's a beautiful tune. Antonio, do you play a lot of jazz standards? Let's see. Seth's question here was, do you always play with your knuckles aligned with your forearm? I always try to. Yes. Oh, backwards fellow is the point is you can't. Good. I'm glad that I wasn't misunderstanding that, backwards fellow. So let me jump over to Seth's question. Do you always play with your knuckles aligned with your forearm? Yes, I think. I've got some Mozart open. Let me play some of that and let's see what happens. Well, right here, we can see a good example. I'm sitting in a little bit of a strange place to talk to the camera, but my left hand has to cross the front of the body to play some of these notes. And even with a correct amount of lean, there's still a little bit of an angle there. But you see, when I'm talking into the microphone, which is, I'm a little off camera right now, but when I'm talking here, you can see that massive angle. I would not play it with that angle, but I would be trying to move over so that there's much less. Jeff is here, Jeffrey Boyle. Welcome. Does that answer your question, Seth? When the hands are outside of the body, if we think of the torso as playing inside the torso, it means our elbows are up against us and then inside, and if the hands have to cross, right? But playing outside the body, most of the time we're doing everything possible to keep the forearm and the knuckles and everything in alignment, yes. And when we can't do that, then we lean. Seth said a bit, but it was more about height. Oh, height, yes. This is actually, so this is interesting. This is as low as this bench goes. And the height here is pretty comfortable for me. Sometimes when I perform, I like to raise the bench, but I usually don't practice with it higher than that currently is here. This is a good height. I raise the bench and I play a little bit, my shoulder's gonna go up, so don't pay attention to that because I'm just demoing what's happening from the elbow down. But I might play with more of an angle that's kind of like this, down and into the keys just a little bit. It helps me feel like I have more power and more control over everything that I've practiced. But if I practiced like that all the time, I would end up losing a lot of finger articulation that I need to work on, right? So Seth, hopefully that answers your question as well. There is some movement that's up and down with the wrist, but usually I try really hard not to let the knuckles move at all, right? The knuckles, these big knuckles, this is the bridge, and this is where, this is a big part of our foundation of piano playing is in here in the hand. And we don't want to lose any energy if this collapses downward like that, or we play too flat. Yeah. And I'm personally not a fan of having the knuckles up higher, because usually that means my fingers are over curved. So I hope that answers your question, Seth. And I'd be curious to know where you're coming from by asking that. Are you playing with more? I think you just answered my question before I even finished asking. You say, mostly unsure if the bridge should be higher than the forearm or not. here's a bit more of a complicated answer. The only time that I really teach having a higher bridge than the forearm is if I'm teaching young children that don't have fine motor control and don't have, great body awareness. Because sometimes if we can work with them on that, then we eliminate another big problem, which is the end finger joints collapsing. And we really don't want that. So we're making a compromise and using the way the body is built in a very natural structure, sometimes called the arch, to play where these knuckles might be up higher than other parts of the hand, right? Now, as I work with older and older students, I encourage that position to drop, not to lose structure, but because as we drop, we gain a lot more mobility. If we're over curved, or if the fingers are curved in because we're maintaining a high bridge, then we have to actually lift. We talked about this on the last stream. We have to lift and press and lift and press, and we're doing all kinds of opposite actions. And we want to eliminate that. So if our fingers stay in that natural position, and just to demo what I said last time, Taubman method, shake out your hand, find what's natural, let it rest on the keyboard. That position is what we strive to maintain throughout playing. Going back to Bachwitz Fellow real quick. I'm glad to know that we are in agreement. And I'm going to come back to your question about the piano in a second. Hadar says, I think I know what you mean. Some Russian pianists really raise the forearm like they're actually attacking the keys. And Bachwitz Fellow, thanks for sharing where you're from. Richmond, Virginia. Awesome. I don't know if I knew that or not. As far as the kind of a Russian method of playing the piano, there's a lot of playing from above the keys in the Russian school. This is opposed to something like the German school of playing, which is very on the keys and down. So if you see a German-trained pianist playing Beethoven, there's going to be a lot of fingers touching the keys at all times, not moving very high off the keys, and staying very connected. And a lot of arm weight to press. Press is the wrong word, but arm weight to drop in, and it produces a different kind of tone. The Russian school has a lot to do with the kind of music most of the Russian composers wrote, which utilize things that sound like bells in the distance, right? And in order to get that bell-like tone, there's a lot more motion. We actually use the body like it's the ringer of a bell. And so this isn't forte, but there's a whole lot more motion than just playing down and in, right? And if you're playing the really, really, really big Russian repertoire, you need a tremendous amount of power to play it really well. And if we start from above the keys and really drop into them, we can get a lot of power. So different schools of thought, different ways of being trained as a pianist. One is, it's really down to personal preference. If you have an opportunity to learn from teachers that are from different schools, or if you just study people online that are playing concert pianists and see how they're playing, it comes down to personal preference in the end, and a little bit of what works for your technique. But if you can, it's great to experience different kinds of things. Seth said staying on the keys is tough. Yeah. I gravitate toward more of the Russian style of playing. A lot of my teachers throughout my early 20s were all Russian or Eastern European, Georgian, Polish. And so they all came from very, very similar places. And when I would have lessons with teachers that used different approaches, they would really try to work the Russian side out of it. And it never really worked. That's just something that it worked for me and my technique, and I like the tone, and I love Russian music, so it helps me play that kind of stuff. A Bachwitz Fellow says, you definitely use slightly over-curved fingers for very beginning students and then begin to drop. Yeah, I think, it all has to do with body awareness and the muscle control that's been developed. And so if you're starting as an adult, I mean, that is anywhere from like 16 years old, 14 years old probably, all the way on. The approach, I think, is very different. That was a great question, Seth. It opened up a whole nice discussion. Going back to Bachward's Fellow's comment. By the way, if you have another question about anything, drop it in the chat, and we can always talk about more stuff, fingering, whatever else. I know, Antonio, we kind of we left the topic of your piece a bit ago, but I hope that was helpful to you. And back a bit ago, Antonio, you said this is your first piece ever. Holy cow! That's great, Antonio. You picked a great challenge for your first piece ever. I think we can give Antonio a little round of applause. I know we didn't get to hear him play, but for tackling this right off the bat, that's awesome. I'll give a little applause, but put some in the chat for him. So, see, Bachward's Fellow, you had asked about, can I tell much difference in the carbon fiber shanks? A bit. And I kind of know, because I used to have a new Mason Hamlin 7-footer that I played on all the time. I know what that's supposed to feel like. It's the bigger difference in feel. I also had a lot of regulation work done on the piano, so there's a lot that feels different, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. I can definitely tell how soft the hammers are. They feel totally different on impact. Oh, thank you, Jason, and welcome to the stream, Jason. So the shanks, here's what I'll say about the carbon fiber shanks. They're not getting in the way of what I want to do, which is one of the things that I love about them. I don't feel like there's not like any kind of resistance inside the mechanism. So the piano it responds more readily. And everything's just very even. It's very even. And by the way, the hammer, everything is like right out of the box. We didn't even do any voicing to the piano yesterday when my tech was here. It is literally just the hammer's out of the box, installed, and we did a lot of regulation and then just tried it out, and it's incredibly even. There might be a couple things that we change, but I wanted to get used to it first before I jumped to any conclusions, because I was so used to playing something that was so bright that I just want to kind of settle in before we make changes that we might not be able to go back from. So I wonder, though, so now this piano is going back to the composite material. This piano is almost all composite of some kind. So the shanks and flanges are now carbon fiber. Because of the generation of this Kawai, the whippings are plastic. And there's a couple of the pieces that are plastic. And since this piano, Kawai redesigned those pieces with a composite as well. So there's very little wood left in here. The center of the hammer is wood because that'll never change. The keys themselves are wooden because that probably won't change either. And that's it. So it probably has to do with the whippings and the inner components in there. It's not as fast as like a Yamaha or a Mason Hamlin would be, the return of the keys and the action and everything, but it feels good. It feels real nice. Thanks for asking. Let's jump back to Hadar's question. And by the way, good to see you, Hadar. We hadn't seen you here in a couple weeks, so I'm glad you could tune in. We were thinking of you, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Hadar, because I was playing some examples in C major, and everybody gave me the okay to do it because you weren't around. So Hadar says, I'm currently finding myself practicing arpeggios, octaves, fast jumps, and so on in C-sharp minor, and I'm feeling guilty because you still can't read sheet music. Should I stop? No, don't stop. I would say spend some more time learning how to read music. I would definitely do that. But don't stop the other kind of practicing you're doing. Yeah, that's the only thing I would say. If you can, some of the pieces that you're learning by ear or with the Synthesia style videos, pick out the music, the sheet music, learn with that side by side and start to draw the correlations between the two. But definitely don't stop and don't feel guilty about the other technique you're practicing. In fact, I personally wish that more classical pianists had more training away from sheet music. I don't think sheet music should go away at all. I think it's incredibly important, and there's a reason why it still exists after about 500 years or so. Maybe modern notation, 300 or 400 years. Yeah, there's a reason why, and it's because it's so much for us on paper. I mean, there's also a lot it misses, but I don't think there's ever going to be I can't imagine a better way of notating all this stuff. And reading the notes in Synthesia, they miss a whole lot of things that we get put on the paper. So I would definitely pick up reading, but I applaud you for all of the ear training you're doing and all the technical practice away from music, because a lot of students really need more of that. And I try my darndest with my private students to do stuff like that. Ear training and other things, even if they aren't working on composing something themselves. But I think it's very, very important. Antonio says to Haydar, Paul McCartney and Chet Baker never, ever learned to read music. So you're in good company. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Some of the greatest musicians, popular musicians of the 20th century never learned to read music. A lot of pop musicians today don't know how to read music either. They kind of read MIDI notes, and they drop notes on a computer and move them around, and they come up with what sounds good. So, yeah, that's my answer to you, Haydar. Don't feel guilty, but do incorporate reading when you can, especially if you can tie it to pieces that you're working on. And Seth said, do some reading practice when you aren't practicing too. Yeah, that's good. And Haydar, I've mentioned here in the streams before, maybe you've been here, there's the Schaefer sight reading book is a great book to start with for just reading some really, really basic stuff. You might want to go out and buy a method book or something like that, like the Faber all-in-one piano method, because that'll really take you kind of note by note through a bunch of things. It might feel extremely simple, but on the other hand, yeah, Haydar, I think you spelled it right, Schaefer, yeah. So it might feel so simple compared to things that you've been working on, but you'll also be able to blaze through like the first book, the second book, because you're not going to need to work on as much of the technique that's presented. It's simply for the practice of reading notes. Bachman's Fellow says there are sight reading resources which build incrementally melodic lines and then intervals and things like that. That is true as well. Tiago says, working with sheet music gives me so much pleasure. I can't imagine learning a piece without it. I love the process of adding notes to it, such as intervals and structure. And yeah, it is a totally different experience to learn something by ear or to learn something from music. It's somewhat akin to, if you've learned from a piece of music, it's somewhat akin to having it memorized after you learn it really well and then stopping reading. If we've memorized it really well and we're using our ears and we're using some theory knowledge and some other things to make sure we're playing everything the right way and not relying on muscle memory that we've just executed over and over and over and over again, it starts to feel different because our brain is being worked in a different way. And Bachwart's Fellow says, I can play an ad-lib better without music than I can with music. Yeah. There's something, and this is why I love having students work without music, at least part of the time, if not half the time or so, is that it's such a different way to think about what we're doing. When our eyes aren't glued to a piece of paper and trying to decipher a language, we start exploring music in different ways. We start hearing it, like really hearing it, instead of our ears maybe not being fully connected because our eyes are so engaged and our body is so engaged. And Antonio says, if you play the wrong notes, you could just call it jazz. I love it. I love it. Or if you write your own music, you can play any notes you want, and it's still yours. Let's see. Jason says, any advice on sight singing? My piano teacher is going to be big on that whenever I start back with her. I feel flushed and embarrassed that I don't like my voice. Okay. Jason, I don't know. So you're in good company. I don't know of anybody, especially at the beginning of sight singing. If they're not a singer, they probably don't like the way they sound. And so it's easier said than done, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about. And I do sight singing with some of my in-person students too, and they turn red, and it's a whole thing. And I sing with them. Maybe you can ask your teacher while you do it, can they sing the first one or two with you, just to kind of build your confidence a little bit, so that you're not stepping out on this massive limb all by yourself into this new territory. So that's just kind of emotionally being okay with what you sound like. I have found that recording yourself doesn't really help. Not with becoming more okay with how you sound. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that. There's some great questions coming in, but we're sticking with Jason for a second here. Other advice on sight singing? Well, some of the most important things, I think, are to learn, one, how to sing scale passages. So just plain old major, minor scales. Can you sing them, and can you sight sing them? If you're given a note on a page, and can you tell, is it a major or minor scale, and can then you sight sing it? That's one thing. Can you also sight sing your chords, your triads, your basic root position, first inversion, second inversion triads? So if I ask you, here, I'll give you an example. Since Haydar was talking about C sharp. That's a C sharp. I can't play the chord. So if I'm going to sing C sharp minor, I need to know it's bum, bum, bum. That's my root position triad. Bum, bum, bum. First inversion. Bum, bum, bum. Second inversion. Bum, bum, bum. So there you go. You have nothing to be embarrassed about now, Jason. Because I just sang in front of everybody here. So root position triads and then all of the inversions. Can we sing those, and can we also tie that to the page? And then when you're sight singing, we're going to call on those kind of built-in bits that we've practiced. Away from any sight singing exercises, we're going to have little things that we can pull apart and say, this is a major triad. Maybe it's in root position. Maybe it's an inversion. This is a triad, like an arpeggio that leads into a scale. Something like that. Right? And can we identify those two parts and then have enough practice? Our brain knows, okay, part A is this arpeggio, part B is a scale. Can I switch? Right? And you can make up. I mean, you can, of course, look online. There are tons of places. You just Google sight singing exercises, or you'll find PDFs upon PDFs of stuff that's already created for a whole variety of things. And you can just use those. Or you can test yourself at the piano and say, I'm going to give myself one note, and it's going to be this note. I need to sing a major triad, and then I need to sing this, and add it all together, and then can you do it? Make it short enough that you can remember all of what you're testing yourself on, and then play it. Can I sing a major scale? Right. So that kind of stuff. And hopefully your teacher will be working on that in person with you. So you're not kind of just left to your own devices to figure all of that out. But I love that you're doing sight singing and just exploring singing. Yeah, absolutely, Jason. My pleasure. And that's so important. And I know you saw that video I did about it. So, so important. So I'm going back through the chat real quick. Yeah. Okay, Sir Woolsley with the golden question. Are you familiar with Yun Chun's Rock 3 And so you saw Rock 3 a few days ago, and compared to you felt disappointed. Gosh. Well, Sir Woolsley, first of all, great on hearing Rock 3. It's one of the most beautiful pieces ever written. There's a reason why Yun Chun won the Clyburn at 18 years old. I think, if I'm right, he was the youngest winner ever of the Clyburn. So there's a reason for that. There's a reason why he beat out the people in their 30s who have been performing and competing professionally for 10 years plus. He is incredible. Really, really, really amazing. The technique is perfect, flawless, and all of his music oozes musicality and artistry. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the world hasn't seen a pianist like that in a long time. So kudos to him for winning on his first attempt. And there's still something special about hearing live classical music, but I know what you mean. There would be some people, I think, that wouldn't disappoint you. But playing Rock 3 is a gosh, they'd probably have to be one of the handful of absolutely elite musicians that are out there right now. If you've listened and studied that recording of Rock 3, to not be disappointed by. I heard Vladimir Feltzman, who I ended up studying with when I was older. I heard him play Rock 3 when I was 14. I heard him play it live, and my mind was absolutely blown. He would be someone that I would say would give Yun Chun a run for his money. And, of course, the other regulars that you see. Trivanov and among others. We can't forget Yuja, right? Let's see, jumping forward. Tiago says, Charles, are you about wrist circles all the way to key bed level, as in the wrist circling as low as the bottom of the keys? Is bottom of... in practice, yes. Yes. So, let's see if I can play something here for you guys. So this little passage, it's quick. And in order to execute that nicely, I want to do somewhat of a wrist circle. There's a drop. I don't think I would ever drop lower than that in performance, but in order to get flexible enough and have this feel natural enough, we probably, especially like if you're practicing your hand in Faber, that we maybe want to exaggerate the drop. And then somewhat exaggerate the over-the-top motion. I usually have students exaggerate it first because even within 30 seconds of not exaggerating it, we've gone back to completely straight with no wrist motion. Because if it hasn't been incorporated before, the body just isn't familiar with it. So I think I would, without being able to see exactly what you're doing, I would say exaggerate the motion in your technical practice and then let it be incorporated into your repertoire practice. I'm a big fan of keeping those two things separate as much as possible. There are times we can't avoid talking about technique in a piece of music, but if we can do a majority of our technique work in technical stuff, and then when we need it in like a passage here or there in our repertoire where there's something that's very challenging, then we talk about how to tackle it in context, and we learn from that. Yeah, most of the time I would say keep those separate and do that exaggeration. Yeah, because let's see, Tiago, yeah, you're embarking on your second year playing, so congrats on that. Bachwards Fellows is Hannah Smith Progressive Sight Reading Exercises. I have not heard of those. We should go check those out. And Seth says, have you tried singing into a candle? I have. And let's see, if you're asking Jason about that, Jason, I don't see Jason having replied to that. But I guess I wouldn't go there first. Because I would just want to let the body feel natural and be free, especially if we're already self-conscious about singing to begin with. And then if we're going to work on vocal technique, that's something to work on. I was never great at singing into a candle. Yeah. I know that I let too much air past my chords, and all my singer friends, they make sure and they tell me that. See, jumping down further, a Bachwards fellow was talking about finding range. That's great stuff. Good. Seth says, try to avoid A, though is much easier to sing. Yes. Any diphthongs, we want to avoid those. Diphthongs are the combination of two vowel shapes. So, Hadar says, today Charles will play some Rachmaninoff for us. I don't know. I'd have to sight read something, but maybe. I don't know if Rachmaninoff wrote anything in C major. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So about singing, avoid diphthongs. It's always easier to produce a good tone with good support, and not let the mechanism in the face, in the mask, all of that, not let that get in the way of vocalizing if we stick with a neutral vowel. That's easy to say, and that's actually harder to incorporate, but that's still great advice. Lots of great advice about singing here. Really, really good stuff. Let's see. Sir Woolsley said, if you had to play a Bach two-part invention, if you had to play Bach number 13, would you play it on the faster side, or would you play it a bit more mellow and calm? I would probably play it more calmly. Yeah. I don't think there needs to be anything frantic about Bach in almost any circumstance. And, of course, Gould's interpretations are, people either love them or they hate them. So I wouldn't model a great performance off of Gould because of that reason. It's very personal to him, and it caused a big divide in how we play Bach and how we approach Bach. I would stick with something that's, first of all, stick with something that speaks to you. And for me, that would be more calm, not frantic, not in a frenzy. It can still be quick, but quick and under control. Oh, let's see. Going further. Okay, I've caught up almost to the bottom. Patrick is here. Hello, Patrick. So let's see. Patrick's got a question, and Tiago has another question. So Patrick, is there a way to make the jump easier in the F minor arpeggio according to Hannon? So you just mean an F minor arpeggio, Patrick? Like... let's see. I'm not sure if I know what you mean, Patrick. If you said major, minor, are you talking about a particular Hannon exercise? So a major, minor arpeggio would be like a dominant arpeggio. So your question is there, according to Hannon, is there anything in Hannon that can make the jump easier? No. Hannon is very focused on fingers and not crossing, fingers that don't cross at all. So probably not So Patrick says, no, just his regular arpeggios with jumps. Patrick, can you give me a number of an exercise? Because I can't think of any off the top of my head that feel like they have jumps. Because when I think of a jump, I'm thinking of the thumb moving or the whole hand moving a significant amount. And you're going to make me do something I hate doing, and that's pulling out my Hannon book. While Patrick grabs that, Tiago's question, he says a little off tangent, but since we're into singing and piano, are you also impressed with Jacob Collier's abilities? Absolutely. He's incredible. And the way he hears the world and the way he hears music is just, it's amazing. It's amazing. And how he can hear just the tiniest micro shifts in tonality. Sometimes I don't hear that stuff. And sometimes it's so interesting that he has this like very precise, like talking about rhythm, Jacob Collier's rhythm, he has this very precise notion of how rhythm is offset and how it's manipulated. And usually people in other genres would just say, feel it or swing it or groove it or lay off the beat or something like that. And it's all done by feel. And Jacob Collier, it's in his mind, it's like perfectly mathematical. He hears these microscopic divisions of beat and can move things around. It's incredible. Bachward's Fellow, he is perfect to respond about Bach. And Bachward's Fellow prefers a singing melodic style, bringing out counterpoint, rather than a percussive style like Gould. That's a great comment. And I would 100% agree with that. Yeah. I know Patrick is getting his Hannon book. I'll get mine just so I'm prepared. And I'll be right back. Oh, this is a book that usually stays on my bookshelf. Okay, arpeggios on the triads in the 24 keys. Let's see if our pages don't align. Let's see. I think I'm close here. Here we go. Okay. Oh, so these are just our standard. Okay, so Hannon did everybody a favor and incorporated all of your scales and all of your standard arpeggios into his book. I wouldn't call those Hannon exercises, and as opposed to to things like 1, 2, 3, 4, or going in later. All of these that are written in C position. So when Patrick says, what I mean by jump is from the 3 to 1 movement. Great. So we are on the same page, Patrick. I would also consider that a jump. So if we're in F minor, or I'll just do F minor. A couple of things to think about as you play arpeggios, Patrick, is practice them 2 ways. Sorry, for the people that have heard this before, it'll be a great review. Practice them in 2 ways. And one way is with complete finger legato, no pedal. So we're really focusing on connecting 3 to 1. That is a pretty large turn of the wrist. Right? But then we also want to practice jumping over them. If I play without pedal, you can hear the lift. If I play with the pedal, there's no lift, there's no gap, and all of those are articulated at the same dynamic. we want to practice both of those. Again, without pedal, and let me show you top down. Don't be afraid of the gap. With pedal. You can add some wrist movement into these. Yeah, you can. Where we kind of lift the wrist and let the thumb fall into the next note. Yeah. So that's a lift on the way up. On the way down, I tend to want to simply let the hand stay a little elevated and let the wrist be turned ever so slightly to the left. I think my overhead camera is quite delayed, so I'm not going to switch back to that. Yeah. And the left hand would follow similar things, yeah. But those are a couple ways to help. It has less to do with finger articulation, right? The only finger articulation, and it's not really a finger articulation that we're striving for, it's the finger legato is having that fluidity to turn the wrist and let the arm be free. But most of the time, when we're not practicing simple arpeggios, we don't have enough time for that movement. But it goes back to the idea of exaggerating, like I was talking about with Tiago earlier. If we exaggerate this motion, when we want to eliminate it, or when we need to eliminate it, we still have like a residual amount that's left over. So even when we want to play broken, there's going to be a little bit of a thumb tuck, and it's going to happen naturally, right? Okay. Great question, Patrick. Great question. Let's see. Bachwar's Fellow says, if you play the thumb on C instead of the F, it smooths it out a bit. Oh, that's almost like playing... That's like using the fingering that I would choose for the second inversion, where the thumb starts on C. Yeah. That is a good choice. That's a good choice. And Bachwar's Fellow says, my personal gripe with people who say they play Hanon is that after the first 30-some five-finger exercises, Hanon becomes standard scales, arpeggios, chords, octaves. Yes. Yeah, that's true. And how... Oh, gosh. Some of the things later in the book, like 47 and 48. And then playing scales. Up and back and whatnot. That is... the directions just drive me bonkers. Because the book says lift the wrists after each stroke, which would be like that. I never, ever, ever do that. Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Zero is here. Hello, Zero. Zero said, or asked, how to become good at reading music. If there's no chord progression, or if you don't know chord progression intervals, harmony like that, let me give you a quick answer, Zero. If you can clarify a little bit, I'll help out even more. But a quick answer is actually, in order to get better at reading music, is that we have to learn to identify all of the things that we do recognize. So, let's say there is no chord name written above the staff, it's just notes. Well, we want to learn how to recognize vertically what's being played. Are we playing an A flat chord that might be spread out? throughout an arpeggio or an arpeggiated figure? Are we playing C sharp minor that's spread out over an arpeggiated figure? Things like that. Learning how to identify melody notes and whether they're a part of the chord or not a part of the chord. Those are things that we want to work on with our reading. So it's reading compared with an understanding, harmonic understanding. Because, like I say to all my students, the more simply we can identify the broad scheme of what's happening, the faster we're going to be able to read and play it. So if we can identify what the harmony is, what inversion it's in, what scale it is, that helps. That is, I think, the next step after simply learning what the notes are on the page. That is the next step to strive for. Oh, and Seth says Hannon is dangerous. I'm glad we've got some non-Hannon fans here. Let's see. Buckwards Fellow also says playing the thumb on C passes it under the A flat also helps. Yeah, and so it's so Woolsley. I'm going to come back to that in a second since you asked about lifting the wrist. Playing the thumb on C. Yeah, Buckwards Fellow and I we're basically describing similar things here in that if you practice different fingering combinations in arpeggios, we're going to be learning how to navigate the keyboard in slightly different ways. And they're both important. And we're going to find examples of both. I usually don't say to change the fingering, the typical standard fingering of your root position, simply because when we practice the other inversions, we're going to get other fingering choices. And we're going to end up starting on different fingers. But it is totally valid to start our root position on a different finger other than thumb. Like he suggested starting F minor on 2. It just makes it feel like second inversion, right? But we're starting on F instead. So we accomplish the same thing, but we're doing it in maybe 2 different ways. Very, very subtly different ways. Let's see. Zero, thanks for following up, Zero. You say the ability to perceive complete sentences rather than simply deciphering individual letters. How to become good at it, and specifically how to recognize harmonies. Okay. Okay, Zero. Go, I'm going to give you more than this, but first, go and watch the video that's on the channel here that's about identifying the root of a chord, because I talk through a whole bunch of stuff. That is a super important concept to know, and it's 20 minutes long, so I can't talk about it here. But we really want to learn how to be able to identify the root of a chord anywhere in a piece of music. And then we're going to get used to seeing the shapes that different chords and different structures make. So you say your technique is good and you can play Chopin etudes, but reading skills are so bad that you need a lot of time to read. Yes. So we want to tie in those other things. So doing some harmonic analysis on the side, whether it's music that your repertoire that you've learned or that you're learning, dive in, and it's going to take time first. So take your score, take it away from the piano for the first time, maybe the second time. Go through and start finding the roots of chords, start finding what harmonies are. Learn about Roman numeral analysis, because Roman numerals tell us how harmony functions. And when we understand that, and we understand why there's dissonance and why there's resolution, and a little bit, at least a little bit, of how the composer used musical tools to take us on this journey from the first note all the way through everything to the last note. The more we can do that, the more we understand those nuts and bolts, the better. And then start to come back to the piano and do some of that analysis while you're on the bench. So when we aren't racking our brain over how to find, for example, the root of a chord, when we've come to start to understand that better, then we're going to come back to the instrument and say, okay, I can play this passage, and now I'm going to feel how this is to play, and I'm going to analyze it, and we're going to do this at the same time. But this is a skill that's probably better extra time spent on it. So this should be in addition to our technical practice and things like that. Yeah, so for those of you that were asking, I don't know if Sir Woolsley asked about that or not, but the video that I'm talking about is just how to find roots of chords. I don't know. It's on the channel somewhere, or you can just search for it with Pianist Academy. It should come up. It should come up. Nelba, hello Nelba, thanks for being here. And Nelba says, I have found Chopin's method for piano. Do you recommend that? Chopin was a fantastic teacher, so yes. There's so much we can learn from Chopin. I always go back to saying Chopin instead of Chopin. But yes, definitely study his method of teaching and how he wrote music and how he taught his students. There's a fantastic book that is Chopin as seen through his pupils and colleagues. That's very close to the title. And it's a bunch of little anecdotal letters and topics and little notes here and there that, especially if you're working on a piece of music of his, they're eye-opening and just wonderful to read. So yeah, Chopin's method is great. And a lot of people here know this, but I'm a big fan of the Taubman method for playing the piano. It's really keeps the body being used in a really, really healthy way. It makes playing the piano very easy. To get slightly off topic here, well, only very slightly. How many people here saw the Taubman video that was posted on Tonebase maybe like a week ago? It's a great video, and Edna is such a fantastic teacher. And I took a read through the comments, and boy, they were, some people were really upset about the video, and I couldn't believe some of the things I was reading. And there are, Sir Woolsley says, do we actually know how to pronounce Chopin? Chopin was both Polish and French, so yeah. Chopin is probably right since he spent so much time in France and in Paris. So Jose said, yes, you saw that Taubman video. And oh my gosh. And Tiago, yes, you noticed the anti-Taubman crew. It's incredible. There are some super talented people who have lived and breathed and walked the earth and played the piano that have fought the body and risen to extraordinary heights while they don't play very naturally. Great. That's good for them. And Jose says, so many injured pianists have benefited from Taubman. That's absolutely true. And one of the things, I think she mentioned it, I think Edna mentioned it in the video, was that when she was, it was either when she was at Juilliard or when she went back later, there have been more people studying at the Juilliard School, which is supposed to be the best music school in the world, that are injured than anywhere else. Almost everybody is suffering injuries of some kind. And it's because there isn't a good reason for that. People that are studying music at those premier levels, they shouldn't be having problems where they have to take a break for months to heal, to let the body heal. Even if you're playing 8 hours a day, there are ways of doing that where you can play for that long and you don't have any detrimental physical effects. So, are there people in the world, and will there always be people in the world that can not follow that and still be amazing pianists? Absolutely. But I think there are more people now than ever before who can achieve levels of greatness that they would never have been able to achieve because of these other things that are rooted in physiology and science. So anyway, there's my little rant about anti-Taubman. I think it's an incredibly important bit of technique, and it's not a bit of technique. It's an entire way of life, not just a way of approaching the piano. Let's see. Sir Woolsley says, you love any tone-based video that has Seymour. Seymour's great. Yeah. I haven't watched the Brahms one yet. That'll be interesting to watch how those two teach the stuff differently. Sage, hello, Sage. About reading, having a separate session apart from regular practice may help. Yeah, I completely agree with that, Sage. Yes, keep it separate, and especially at the beginning. And the more it gets incorporated, the more often we're just going to start to see that stuff during our regular practice time. Zero says, what are your thoughts on the Russian music schools? Oh, gosh. I can't really comment because I haven't actually visited one. I've studied with teachers that are Russian and that have learned from the Russian conservatories, and I love their approach. I don't know, just to be completely transparent, I don't know enough about how their approach aligns with the conservatory approach, does or doesn't, to really make a comment about that. But I do know that my Russian and Ukrainian and Georgian teachers have been my favorites that I've studied with for most of my career. So, Tiago, I love that. Yeah, when I get my mug, because I want to take a sip and then I put it back. I'm glad we all have a good time here. The cup, Seth, the cup is full of coffee. Even though it's now 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I drink coffee all day until dinner time. This comes from my days of having rehearsal and teaching until 9 p.m., 10 p.m. It's just, it's too tasty, too good to not have with me. There are a couple more comments here that I want to get to. Nelba says, is it considered bad technique to lift the hands always when it's possible? And you say you have that tendency because you try to relax your arms as much as you can. I would argue, Nelba, that relaxing your arms would be the opposite motion as lifting. It would be dropping. So the more relaxation we play with in the body, the more we're going to let things go. And when we let them go, they go down. If we pull up, we're activating the muscles in the upper arm and in the shoulders to let that happen. And a lot of times if we pull up, what we don't realize is we've also engaged the forearm, because if we didn't, the hand would be drooped. But most of the time, if we lift the arm up, especially as we're practicing and playing, the hands come up with it, which means this is fully under tension because this would be relaxed. Let me find that comment again. Oh, there it is. Nelba's comment. Okay. So, gosh, Nelba, if you can, I would love to see a video of you playing, and you can submit one to be seen on the streams if you are interested in that. There's a link in the description below, because the way I'm envisioning lifting, purposeful lifting, is not a great thing. Lifting because we need to round out a shape that the arms are making, that's a good thing. Lifting so we can drop again, that's a good thing. Lifting for the sake of lifting is not a good thing. So, but yeah, I think you can see the context is going to make such a big difference. So I would love to see you play something if you'd be interested in sending something in, Nelba. Let's see, Zero had a couple comments and about practice, and then I saw later how many hours is the maximum for a pianist. I think I know it was a typo writing pianist. But I think that's actually really funny, because if we practice too long, it can be too long in the wrong way. It can be painful. I personally, so this is different for lots of different people, but if we're going to talk about the amount of time practicing, when I have had a ton of free time, I have found the optimal amount of time to learn a tremendous amount and to really perfect music is about 4 hours. And that's if I had time to take significant breaks, like 30 minutes off, like an hour on, 30 minutes off, an hour on, 30 minutes off. And how much can you really get done in 30 minutes, here and there around? Not much. Basically, you grab a cup of coffee and you have a snack, you use the bathroom, and then you come back and you sit down on the bench. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a few more things than that, but not much, right? And so you really have to have for me, you have to have an extended period of time to be able to cram in that much practice. For me, that was 4 hours. I know a lot of people that do 6 hours and 8 hours a day. They do it and it works for them, but their entire life is practicing and performing. That is all that they do. They don't have another job. They don't have anything else in the meantime. If they're not working yet, they're in school learning music. They're getting a degree in music. They have that much time. But it's all day, because 8 hours, you can't sit down and go for 8 hours straight. You have to take breaks. So 8 hours of practice ends up being a 10-hour day, maybe a 12-hour day of not doing anything else in the meantime. So that's really an all-day commitment. The thing that's most important is that you find how long can you mentally stay focused while you're practicing. And when things start to go, and that's the hard part, is actually seeing and feeling when the focus is going away, because a lot of times we don't notice it until it's been gone for a while. Did I just do it again? I think I put my coffee down without drinking anything. So if we can notice when that focus starts to go away and then stop, at least to take a break before we come back and practice more, or know if it's to stop for the whole day. And for some people, that might be 1 to 2 hours max. So it depends a lot on you and how much you've practiced and how long you can stay focused, how long you can maintain a good posture on the bench. Anytime that we sit here and that we're not very deliberate about what we're doing, and we're not laser focused or really precisely focused on a goal or on achieving something, it's time that isn't being utilized as well as it could be, to the point where I know a lot of people that will 2 hours of their 6 hours practicing is complete waste, because they've just turned their brain off. A quick story. And maybe some of you saw this in an earlier video of mine, but when I was competing in the Bosendorfer competition, I was walking down the hallway of practice rooms, and I was looking for a room to practice in, and there was one guy in particular. I can't remember what he was playing, but he was watching a soccer match on his cell phone on the music rack. It was probably a Chopin etude or something. And he was just playing the Chopin and watching soccer. Like, that was not well-used practice time. And who knows, if he did that for 2 hours, that was just about a complete waste of 2 hours. And yes, people like that make up for it because they practice another 6 hours. Oh, dear. Okay, now I'm going to take a sip. Jose's got a great comment about Taubman, because I know, Seth asked about that. Seth, anything that can watch, so Bob Durso on Tonebase has a video about that. And anything that you can find with Edna Golansky talking, or even going all the way back to Dorothy Taubman, anything you can find online about that is just great to pay attention to. I didn't even realize that I was being taught Taubman technique by teachers. It wasn't ever, my teacher didn't call it that. He just changed my technique and never told me where it came from. And I learned later where it came from and how things work. But anything you can watch about that. Alexander technique is a bit different. And Alexander technique was developed not just for piano playing, but really developed for a lot of other physical therapies. And so we can apply it to playing the piano as well. I don't know as much about Alexander technique as Taubman, for sure. So I can't say, maybe Jose. Jose, do you know? Can you say how much those two align? I'd be interested in knowing that too. I should look that up. Sir Woolsley says, the pianist who was performing Rock 3 a couple days ago was also lifting arms in a weird way. Interesting. I've seen some incredibly weird, on YouTube and in concert, I've seen some incredibly weird technique. Some people have found what works for them, I guess. But yeah, the struggle is, especially if you're self-taught, is not everything, you shouldn't take everything that's out there as the gold standard. I hope that I've built enough trust with all of you that you take what I say, at least gold or silver. But yeah, there's a lot out there that's not great to follow. Oh gosh. Kelvin, hello Kelvin. I haven't seen you in quite some time. I'm just catching up on some of the comments here, and then I'm going to go back to your question, Kelvin. Seth says, muscle memory for the coffee. Yeah, that's right. Oh, Zero. Oh, gosh. I really want to answer Kelvin's question, but what Zero just said is very interesting. Playing the piano is not science, it's a philosophy. I think there's some truth in that, but I think if we completely eliminate science, we're doing a huge misservice. As a teacher, I'm doing a huge misservice to my students, because how the body works is science. I mean, science has given us a way to quantify it so that we can understand it. And to eliminate that it's kind of like going back to how piano would have been taught 200 years ago. And the way it was taught 200 years ago, we know for sure doesn't work today anymore. So, but to your point, Zero, the science itself should never be at the detriment of artistry and musicality and philosophy, or philosophy of our understanding of music. Yeah. So I do think that those two really, we need to be using them together in order to really get the most out of lessons, or the most out of playing, or out of our practice time. Going back to, Zero's got great questions. I really want to get back to Kelvin's question, but I'm going to stick with Zero, another one of Zero's questions here. I'm going to try to make it shorter, though, a shorter answer. They say, is it beneficial to sing or imagine while playing the piano, especially when performing Chopin, in order to achieve better expression? Yes. Yes. I'm not going to leave it that short, but yes, singing is a great way of understanding line and lyricism. And also imagining exactly, so this is kind of in a different way, imagining exactly the sound you want out of the instrument before you play it, or at least while you play it, is super important. That is when we can really make music, because it's our ear and our mind and our body all working together to create something in the moment. And in the moment means always responding to what came before. So after the first four measures of a piece, I mean, after the first note really, but let's say after the first four measures, we've made our first statement of music. Well, everything that comes after that, no matter how we've practiced it, really should relate to how the first statement was presented. If the first statement was presented differently than how we practiced it, then we better be able to connect the two. And we're going to be able to do that better and better and better if we can use our imagination, and we can sing through lines, and we can hear in our mind exactly where we want the music to go. So yes, Bachman's Fellow summed up what I said. Playing piano is a philosophy that uses science. It's always nice to get those kinds of things back, Bachman's Fellow. It makes me, I need to learn how to condense. when I wish I had more time, let's put it that way, to reflect on things and present them so concisely. Okay, going back to Kelvin's question, and maybe I'll take one more question after this, but we're just about ready to wrap up here. Kelvin's question was about recording the piano, the sound of the piano, acoustic and digital. So he said, what do you use to record piano sound? Well, I've got a couple microphones that are off camera over there, and we'll keep it basic for now. They're condenser mics. They go into my studio in the other room that's got all of my other gear that's running that I can see some of it on the screen with all of your comments over here. So condenser mics into some really nice mic preamps, and then into a universal audio interface. And then it comes back out of that and into my video switcher, which is out here. And if you want to know more, the brand is Szczeps. They're Szczeps microphones. That's what I use. And the preamps are DAV Electronics, which are preamps based on the proprietary Decca preamps that were designed specifically for them in their studio. So they're very nice. But all that said, you can get at least 95% of the sound with equipment that's far less expensive. Just some basic, nice condenser mics, a good preamp, and a good interface can do a whole lot for you. And on my digital, that's just all MIDI. So if I did a couple things, or at least the last stream. You can see my dog says hello. One of my dogs. I don't think they've ever been on a stream before. And now that I've pet one, they're not gonna leave me alone. I have two dogs. They are Eleanor and Rigby. And I hope many of you get the reference. This one is Eleanor. So Kelvin, I hope that answered your question a bit about, the keyboard stuff, the digital stuff is all virtual instruments. I don't use the onboard sounds for the keyboard. I use a couple other VST libraries. Specifically, I like the Garriton CFX, Yamaha CFX that was recorded in Abbey Road Studios. And I really like VI Labs, their Ravenscroft 275 piano. It's great. Those are usually the two that I gravitate toward. All right. I don't think we got another question in, do we? Oh, she went around just to... That's okay. All right. I hope we've had a good time today. I've had a good time answering your questions, and a lot of great questions. For Zero, who joined us, it was great to meet you, and all kinds of other people. We had a bunch of new people here. So welcome, and I hope you'll tune in again. We'll be back, fingers crossed, as long as something doesn't come up, we'll be back at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, our usual time for the next stream. Remember, you can submit videos of yourself playing, and I love hearing all of you play and talking through your repertoire and what you're working on. So please, there's a link or a little note in the description about how to do that, and please submit anything, really anything, from the most beginner to Chopin etudes or Rachmaninoff concerti. All right, Hadar, thanks for being here, Hadar, and thanks, Antonio. Thanks for the question that kicked us off today, Antonio. All right, everybody. In 2 weeks, I'll see you again, and there are going to be more new videos getting posted around the channel. So make sure you stick around and check those out. Till next time. Yes, till next time, Jose. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and practice smarter, not harder. All right. See you.